Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Bhakti Vedanta Churka Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Bhakti Rakshak Srila Shridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Om Vishnu Pada Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Jivakuru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Paramahansa Srila Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Satyananda Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishna Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauri Vedanta Charya Srila Baladeva Vijibhushan Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Narottam Srinivas Shramananda Prabhu Chaya Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Diva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sai Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Sri Surup Damodar Roy Ramananda Shri Gaur Parshada Vinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai. Shri Atati Mayapur Shri Matati Kodumati Matati Kodati Pratiti Janati Madhujumati Puturapamaka Shri Navati Dhan Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Gogovadan Parasavanamaka Shri Rajmananda Ki Jai. Shri Shama Kunj Radha Kunj Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Ramaya Purnamasi Ki Jai. Gopashwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudasan Shakratu Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Tetra Ki Jai. Srila Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakta Prabha Shri Prabhat Maharaj Ki Jai. Gantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nita Navaditam Parakram Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gaura Chishe Namaha. Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namah. Bande Shri Krishna Chaitanyam Nityanando Sahodito Gaudo Daye Pushpavanto Chitro Shamdo Tamonudo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Brindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I offer my Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Asto Tarasata, Sri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and my same Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My Dandavat pranams to all my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, especially to the lotus feet of the author of Sri Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Astotarasata Sri Srila Sachid Ananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And my Dandavat pranams I'm offering to all the Vaishnavas and to all the Vaishnavis. We left off yesterday when Nityananda Prabhu was showing to Srila Jiva Goswami the place called Balal Digi. And he was describing how there was a huge pond built there in previous yugas. And then he said to them, he said, later, King Lakshman Sen had this pond enlarged and deepened. He's a very famous king in Bengal, Lakshman Sen, in more recent times, last few hundred years. And desiring to deliver his forefathers, he named this pond Balal Dirgika, after one of his ancestors who was named Balal Sen. Look at this beautiful high hill. This was the palace of King Lakshman Sen, but now it is in ruins. Such ornament-like sites were constructed by various kings at great sacred places like Sri Navadvip Dham for the purpose of acquiring pious credits. Later, one Yavana king desecrated this place. Therefore, the devotees no longer show it due respect. The land here is extremely sacred, but devotees do not reside here because they fear the association of the Yavanas. The devotees left this place because it was here that a deity of the Lord was shown disrespect. And then, as Nityananda Prabhu said this, Sri Nityananda Prabhu roared loudly, thus manifesting his anger towards the Yavanas, and he arrived at the village of Simulia. Now we're reading about Sri Simantadvip. Antardvip, Mayapur, Simantadvip, second island. Seeing the village of Simulia, Sri Nityananda Prabhu said to Sri Jiva, know with certainty that this place is Simantadvip. All great saintly personalities say that Simantadvip is situated on the southern bank of the Ganga, on the border of Navadvip. With the passing of time, this island will be flooded by the Ganga, and only one sacred place, Simulia, will be left. Materialistic people will worship Parvati here, calling her Simuli. I will tell you one story in regard to Parvati Devi residing here. You should listen. Once during Satya Yuga, Mahadev Shiv was dancing for a long time uttering the name of Sri Gauranga. And seeing Lord Shiva dancing, Parvati asked, "Please tell me something about Gauranga Dev, whose name you are chanting. My heart is melting by seeing your astonishing dance and hearing the name of Sri Gauranga emanate from your mouth. Whatever I have heard to this day about mantra and tantra, it now seems to be nothing more than a botheration for the living entities. Therefore, O Lord, please tell me about Sri Gauranga, so that I may also engage in worship of him and become alive." Hearing Parvati's words, Pashupati Shiva remembered Sri Gauranga, and he said, "O Parvati, you are the original potency, a portion of Sri Radha. I will tell you about this topmost truth. Taking Srimati Radha's intrinsic mood and bodily luster, Sri Krishna will appear in this Kali Yuga in Mayapur from the womb of Sri Sachi Devi. Being himself absorbed in Sankirtan, Mahaprabhu Sri Gaurhari will distribute the jewel of prem to the public without considering whether the recipient is qualified or not. Fie on the fortune of those living entities who will not drown in this flood of prem. O Devi, it is even useless for them to maintain their lives. I became saturated with prem upon remembering Sriman Mahaprabhu's promise, and my mind lost patience. Therefore I left Kashi. I will live in a cottage on the bank of the Jahnavi Ganga at the border of Mayapur, and I will worship Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu." Hearing these words of Sri Shankar, who wears matted locks, the beautiful Sri Parvati Devi quickly came here to Simanta Dvip. She, Parvati, began to constantly remember Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's form, and chanting the name of Gaura, she drowned in prem, and she was not able to remain calm due to not attaining his darshan. After some days, Sri Gaurachandra, out of mercy, appeared along with his associates to give his darshan to Sri Parvati. Sriman Mahaprabhu's luster was just like that of molten gold. He was tall in stature, his head was beautified with curly hair, and all his limbs were extremely handsome. He was wearing a dhoti folded thrice, and a garland made of extraordinary flowers adorned his neck. Sri Gauranga said in a voice choked with prem, "O Parvati, tell me, why have you come here?" Parvati Devi fell at the feet of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the Lord of the universe, unable to remain calm as she explained her sorrow. Sri Parvati Devi said, "O Master, O Lord of the universe, O life of the residents of the world, why are you deceiving me, yet being merciful to everyone else? O deliverer of the fallen souls, you have appointed me to punish those living entities who are averse to you. Because I am always busy with such duties, I am deprived of your unlimited prem. Everyone proclaims that Maya, illusion, cannot exist where Krishna is present. If this is true, I will always remain averse to you." Understand what she's saying? Everyone proclaims that Maya, illusion, cannot exist where Krishna is present. That one verse Prabhupada used for the masthead of the Bhakti-Gadad magazine. Krishna is light, Maya is darkness. Where there is Krishna, there can be no Maya. So everyone proclaims that Maya, illusion, cannot exist where Krishna is present. If this is true, I will always remain averse to you. How then will I ever behold your eternal pastimes? If you do not give me a solution, I will become completely hopeless. Then saying this, the chaste Sri Parvati Devi, feeling distressed, put the dust from Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's feet on the parting of her hair. Simanta, the word Simanta is that part. And from that time, this place has been known as Simanta Dvip. Some ignorant people started calling this place Simulia. Now Sri Gauranga Chandra, he became pleased upon hearing Sri Parvati Devi's prayers. He said, O Parvati, listen attentively to my words. O Supreme Goddess, Sarveshvari, as my potency, you are not separate from me. I have just one potency, which has two forms. As the internal potency, Swarup Shakti, you are my beloved Sri Radha, and externally, for the purpose of executing activities of the material world, Sri Radha has expanded herself as you. My pastimes cannot take place without you. Certainly in my pastimes, you act as Yogamaya. You dwell eternally in Braj as Purnamasi, and in Navadvip as Prodamaya, together with Lord Shiva, the protector of the Dham. In saying this, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu disappeared, and Parvati Devi became absorbed in praying. Deeply absorbed in love of Sri Gaura, Gaur Prem, Parvati dwells here as Simantini Devi, and she dwells in Mayapur as Prodha Maya. Now comes the village of the Kazi. After speaking thus, Sri Nityananda Prabhu soon reached the Kazi's village together with Sri Jiva. Sri Nityananda Prabhu said, listen, O Jiva, this village of the Kazi is non-different from Mathura in Braj. Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu performed kirtan here. He delivered the Kazi and he gave him the transcendental jewel of prem. Kamsa of Sri Krishna's pastimes is known as Chand Kazi in Gaura's pastimes. For this reason, Mahaprabhu addressed him as his maternal uncle. Out of fear, the Kazi took shelter at Sri Gaur Sundar's lotus feet. One day at the beginning of the kirtan, the Kazi broke a mridanga. He could cause all these disturbances because he was supported by Hussain Shah. And guess who he is? King Hussain Shah of Gaudadesh is Jarasandha in Krishna's pastimes. The Kazi was powerful in regard to breaking mridanga, prohibiting kirtan, only because of Hussain Shah's order. Mahaprabhu made the Kazi fearful by appearing before him as Nishringa in a dream. The frightened Kazi became stunned, just as Kamsa became stunned upon seeing Sri Krishna. Mahaprabhu gave him the gift of praying, and he made him into a great Vaishnava, the Kazi. Only a fortunate person can hear the pastime of the Kazi's liberation. One who sees a difference in the divine principle, the tattva of Braja and that of Navadvip, is an offender at Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Who's an offender? Yes. He therefore attains impersonal liberation. In Sri Navadvip Dham, even an offensive person receives the wealth of the transcendental jewel of prem. Therefore, the pastimes of Sri Gaura, Gaura Lila, are topmost. The holy abode, name, form, and qualities of Sri Gaura, they do not they do not consider one's offenses, and they are most expert in liberating everyone. What are most expert in liberating everyone and do not consider everyone's offenses? the holy abode, the name, the form, and qualities of Sri Gaura. If there are offenses existing in a sadhaka's heart, Krishna's name and holy abode will remove them after a long time only. But by taking shelter of the name and the holy abode of Sri Gaura, one will quickly attain prema, as offenses committed in Sri Gaura's abode do not create any obstacle. Now he's talking about the samadhi, which we can see with our own eyes to this day. O Jiva, now behold the samadhi of the Kazi. All miseries and sufferings are destroyed by taking darshan of his samadhi. After taking darshan of the Kazi's samadhi, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, overwhelmed with prema, quickly went to the place called Shanka Vanika, and there he told Sri Jiva, O Jiva, behold the amazing Sharadanga. One thing, in Jaiva Dharma, you know, there's one chapter where there's a whole group who come to the Nikunja, to the Kunja in which the Babaji Maharaj is there and discussing tattva, right? And they're all dressed like Muslims. So when they came, then they introduced themselves. And they said, actually, we are the descendants of Chand Kazi, direct descendants. Really, we are Gaur Bhaktas. And to this day, because Chand Kazi made a decree that none of my future descendants will ever obstruct the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, now they've come to Sharadanga. Even the name of Sri Sharadanga is enchanting in itself. Here the Supreme Lord Sri Jagannath resides with the people of the Shabara caste. Here's the story. In ancient times, when the barbaric Raktabahu began his violent atrocities, Lord Jagannath came here with his beloved servants. This place is non-different from Sri Purushottam Puri. It is certain that Lord Jagannath resides here eternally. So that's the place which has now been made into a beautiful gardens and temple of Jagannath. That very Jagannath. And one time in 1977 or 79, I forget, one devotee told me who was going to render service to that Jagannath deity by bicycle from the temple and offer artik and bhog and everything. He said, I can't do it. Can you do it for me today? I said, okay. So I got on the bicycle and I rode all the way there. There was only just like a metal, hut. That's all. Just a small little hut. And inside the hut were these quite big Jagannath deities. And I offered bhog, performed artik, then took the remnants back to Mayapur. Sridhar Angam is next. Thereafter, Sri Nityananda Prabhu went past the village of Tantuvai and saw the house of Kola Becha Sridhar. Very, very intimate disciple, follower, associate of Mahaprabhu. Sri Nityananda Prabhu said, after performing kirtan, Sri Gaur Hari rested here to bestow mercy upon his fatigued devotees. This place is therefore called Vishram Stan, or the place of resting. You should also take rest here, in the house of Sridhar. When Sridhar received the news of Sri Nityananda Prabhu's arrival, he came there, offered his full obeisances to the Lord, and began to worship him. Sridhar said to Nityananda Prabhu, O Lord, you are so merciful to this servant of yours. My prayer to you is to please take rest in my cottage. Nityananda Prabhu said, you are greatly fortunate because Sri Gaur Hari himself has bestowed his mercy upon you. We too will rest here today. Sridhar became fully satisfied hearing Sri Nityananda Prabhu's words. With great care, Sridhar brought paraphernalia to serve the Lord and arranged for Brahmin devotees to cook. When Prabhu Sri Nityananda and Srivas Pandit had finished their meals, Sri Jiva took their remnants with great joy. After the meal, Sridhar made Sri Nityananda Prabhu rest on a bed, and along with his entire family, he served the Lord's divine feet. In the afternoon, Srivas Pandit joyfully took Sri Jiva for darshan of Shasti Tirtha. Srivas Pandit said, "Listen, O amiable Jiva, when the demigods heard that Sriman Mahaprabhu would certainly appear in Sri Navadvip Dham, they sent Vishwakarma to this town of Nadia." Vishwakarma, if you don't know, is the architect of the demigods. Now Vishwakarma thought, there should be no scarcity of water for the devotees to drink along the path where Mahaprabhu will perform some kirtan. Therefore, in one night, Vishwakarma dug out 60 large ponds, of which the last one was made in the Qazi's village. Look, one of those ponds is still here, near Sridhar's beautiful banana garden. Sriman Mahaprabhu would play in the water of this pond, and then he would sometimes take Sridhar's bananas. Even today, Sridhar takes his banana flowers and stems and gives them to Mother Sachi with great joy as he remembers these pastimes of Mahaprabhu. O Jiva, just see the nearby place known as Maya Mari. It is still present today. Listen to an episode from the Puranas regarding the glories of this place. Once Sri Baladev Prabhu came here to Navadvip on pilgrimage. So he came to Navadvip, he went all the holy places. As he lay down to rest after his arrival, some local brahmanas came to tell him about the atrocities caused by a demon named Mayasur. Hearing about Mayasur's disturbances, Haladhar, Sri Baladev ran after that demon at great speed and caught him in the middle of a field. A fierce battle ensued between Mayasur and Sri Baladev Prabhu, and finally the demon died in the hands of Sri Baladev. Jai Sri Baladev Prabhu ki jai. So since then, this place is known as Maya Mari. Today I have narrated to you a most ancient story. Fortunate persons see this place, Maya Mari, as Talvan of Braj. Yes, because Talvan was the pastime of Baladev killing the ass demons. So that's the same place in Navadvip Dham. So that night everyone rested there in Sridhar Angan, and next day, early in the morning, they continued their travel, calling out, Hari, Hari, everyone. Nitai Janava Padachaya Jar Ash Nadia Mahatmya Kore E Das Prakash. This servant, Bhakti Vinod, whose only desire is to attain the cooling shade of the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Janava Devi, reveals the glories of Nadia. Thus ends chapter 6. Chapter 7. Jaya Sri Chaitanya Chandra, Jaya Prabhu Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Jai Gadadhar, Jai Srivasadi Bhakta, Gaurapade Anurakta, Jaya Navadvipa Dhamavara, Shadya Vishramastan, Shri Jive Loya Jan, Jatagram Suvarna Vihar. O hey Jeev Prabhu Koi, Apurva Estan Hoy, Navadvipa Prakratir Apar. Sri Nityananda Prabhu took Sri Jiva from Vishram Stan, Sridhar Angan, to Suvarna Bihar. Arriving there, Sri Nityananda Prabhu said, O Jiva, this unprecedented place is beyond material nature. It is transcendental. Now here's the story of Suvarna Bihar. Anyone know? Suvarna Sen, the king. Narada Muni came. You're going to hear what Narada Muni did for the king back in Satya Yuga. During Satya Yuga, a famous king named Sri Suvarna Sen resided here. By the way, there is a Gaudiya Mutt established there in that place. It's across near to Godrumadweep area. So, this king, very famous king, Suvarna Sen, he ruled this place for a long time. Even in his old age, he remained busily engaged in his kingly duties without retiring from them. The king was always engrossed in sense enjoyment, and he always worried about how his kingdom could prosper. One day, who knows by what good fortune, Devarshi Sri Narada came to visit him. Upon seeing Sri Narada, the king offered prayers and he worshipped him. Now, seeing the king's condition, Sri Narada's heart filled with compassion for him. He took the king to a secluded place and instructed him about the real truth, tattva. Sri Narada said, "O king, you are spending your days uselessly pondering how to gather wealth. You should understand that wealth does not bring fortune, but rather misfortune." What does wealth bring? Just once contemplate in your heart the divine knowledge of the actual fortune, which is what? The fifth goal of human life, Krishna praying. Now he's telling the king, just contemplate. Wife, sons, friends, relatives, and others, they are not ours. After death, none of them belong to us. After your death, your body will be cremated on the bank of a river. The ashes will be thrown in its waters. Everyone will then go back to their respective homes. Since no one belongs to you, why are you maintaining false hope that they do? Why are you trying to quench your thirst by remaining attached to sense enjoyment, which being only a tiny drop, is unable to quench your thirst? If you say that attempting to accumulate wealth will enable you to attain happiness and relieve your life of suffering, then I have to say, O king, that is completely false, because life itself is temporary. It will not last for more than 100 years. You should therefore understand the essence of life, the real purpose of life. Just see, we have only attained the human form of life to cross over the ocean of material existence, or in other words, to perform bhajan. Do you know how to attain that place where there is no lamentation, sorrow, or fear? Now make an effort to understand how. O king, that abode can be attained neither by renunciation alone, nor solely by knowledge. When, on the strength of renunciation and knowledge, the material bondage has been severed, the living entities may at most attain kaivalya, sayuja mukti, or merging with the impersonal aspect of the Lord. There is no happiness whatsoever in kaivalya mukti. I'm just hearing a tape of Prabhupada explaining that in his very first recorded Bhagavad Gita lecture. He was really exactly explaining this to brand new people. Amazing how Prabhupada presented. There is no happiness whatsoever in kaivalya mukti. For the living entities, it means total ruination and is completely contemptible. In kaivalya mukti, all sensory pleasures are eliminated, but nothing superior is attained. Therefore, that intelligent person who deeply considers the nature of kaivalya will give up the desire for both mukti, sense enjoyment, and bhukti and mukti, the elimination of suffering. And he will engage solely in the devotion to Sri Krishna. Thoroughly understanding the principles of sambandha, one's relationship with Krishna, abhideya, acting in accordance with that relationship, and prayojan, the ultimate goal of life, he will be detached from sense enjoyment and attached to Sri Krishna's lotus feet. The living entity is Sri Krishna's servant. That's his relationship, sambandha. And without bhakti, abhideya, the jiva will be completely destroyed. On the tree of devotion grows the fruit of love of God, prema. And the ultimate goal of life, prayojan, is to attain the eternal wealth of Krishna prema. Sense enjoyment and liberation are just insignificant fruits of this tree. Sri Krishna is likened to the sun of Chid Ananda, or knowledge and bliss. Maya is his shadow, and the living entity is an infinitesimal particle in the rays of that sun. Because the jiva is generated from the marginal potency, tatastha shakti, illusion, maya, binds him in her net if he turns towards her. If the jiva turns toward maya, then she binds him in her net. That living entity who turns away from Sri Krishna goes towards maya. And as a result, he is caught up in the perplexities of fruitive activities. He wanders about in her trap of material existence, attaining only troubles. He cannot obtain deliverance by the processes of karma and jnana. Sometimes he practices karma, sometimes Ashtanga yoga and other yoga methods. Sometimes he follows Brahma Gyan, impersonal knowledge. Sometimes he takes shelter of the path of logic, but in the end, he is not delivered. Without knowledge about the true nature of the soul, Atma Tattva, it is impossible to be delivered. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Without knowledge about the true nature of the soul, Atma Tattva, it is impossible to be delivered. Still, the jiva is not willing to accept the process of bhakti, which means Atma Gyan. Because of his previous activities, the living entity wanders from one body to another. When, by some good fortune, he comes into the association of sadhus, he attains pure faith, shraddha. Then, by performing bhajan of Sri Krishna in that association, all unwanted tendencies, anarthas, are removed from his heart. He thereby attains pure nishtha, or steadiness in his devotional practices. By continuously performing bhajan, his nishtha gradually transforms into ruchi, intense relish for serving Krishna. Then into asakti, deep attachment for both the practice and the goal of spiritual life, Sri Krishna. Thereafter, bhav, transcendental emotions manifest. And after that, prema, pure transcendental love, manifests from bhav. Shuddha bhakti, or pure devotion, makes its appearance in this sequence. Who's telling all this to us that we're hearing right now? Narada Muni. And who's telling what Narada Muni said? So is this all true, what we're hearing? Yes. Hearing and chanting about the Supreme Lord's qualities, his glories and so forth, remembering, serving and worshipping him, offering him obeisances, becoming his servant, becoming his friend, and offering oneself to him. They are called Navada Bhakti, the 9 limbs of devotional service. A person who follows this 9-fold process of devotion under the guidance of devotees, will achieve the wealth of love of Krishna. Krishna Prem Dhana.
Right, I lost the thread. Please forgive me. How did Narada Muni get involved with this?
Because the king, Samudra Sen, who was living in Navadvip, and he was in Satya Yuga, so he had ruled for like probably thousands of years. But what? Yeah, sorry, Suvarna Sen, Suvarna. Actually, Suvarna means gold. So Narada Muni came to rescue the king because the king had fallen into just looking after his kingdom. Now he's getting old. He's getting quite old. And he's just trying to maintain his kingdom, and everything he's doing is absorption in the material family and kingdom and all of this. Narada came to rescue him. That's why he's telling him this. So he said to the king, you are a greatly blessed king, because your residence is in Navadvip Dham. Your good fortune has arisen because of your staying in the Dham. Now, please give up material enjoyment and reside in the association of saintly devotees to attain pure faith. Engage in continuous chanting of Sri Krishna's name and qualities, and thus invite the Son of Prem to arise in your heart. In the upcoming blessed Kali Yuga, Sri Krishna will appear as Sri Gauranga, and along with his associates manifest his pastimes of Braj here. Whoever will chant the name of Sri Gaur Hari will obtain the mercy of Sri Krishna and residence in Braj. A person who worships Sri Krishna without taking shelter of Sri Gaur Hari and without chanting his name, he will attain Sri Krishna after a long time. But if someone chants the name of Sri Gaur Hari, he will quickly attain Sri Krishna and all his offenses will be vanquished. What name? Saying this, Narada lost his composure and he began to chant Sri Gaur Hari and dance while playing his veena. And his veena also sang along with him. What did the veena sing? O Gaur Hari, when will that fortunate age of Kali come? And after instructing the king about Krishna Bhakti in this way, Sri Narada Muni left that place. By the mercy of Narada, Prem arose in the heart of the king. He began to chant Gauranga, Gauranga and dance. And he begged for Prem from the sadhus. And as a result, all of his desires for sense enjoyment were removed. Once, while sleeping, the king received darshan of Gaur Gadadhar, along with their associates. Sri Gaur Hari, whose complexion is like molten gold, was dancing in his own courtyard with all of his devotees. They were chanting Hare Krishna and embracing one another. As soon as the king awoke, he felt greatly distressed and he began to weep, desiring to attain Sri Gaur Hari. And at that moment, an aerial voice came and said, O king, you will take birth at the time of my manifest pastimes, and you will be counted among my associates. O king, endowed with all good qualities, at that time your name will be Buddhimanta Khan, and you will serve Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Hearing the aerial voice, the king regained his patience and from that moment on began to worship Sri Gauranga. So who is Buddhimanta Khan? Yes, but in Gaur Lila, what service did he render? He was very wealthy in Gaur Lila, and he used to supply in the place of Chandrasekhar Bhavan, where Mahaprabhu performed his dramas. He provided everything, all the costumes, everything that was needed. Buddhimanta Khan. When Sri Nityananda Prabhu finished his story, then Srivas Pandit, absorbed in the mood of Narada. Why is he absorbed in the mood of Narada? Srivas Pandit? Because he is Narada. So then Srivas Pandit, absorbed in the mood of Narada, fainted. Seeing Srivas's condition, Sri Jiva became intoxicated with Maha Prem. He drank the nectar of Gaur's name, and he rolled around in the dust of that place. And then he spoke. Alas, will I also be able to behold that golden complexioned jewel of Sri Gaura at this place? And as soon as Sri Jiva said this, they, means Sri Nityananda, Srivas, and Sri Jiva, could see Sriman Mahaprabhu performing some kirtan. Gaur Hari Bol! That unprecedented form of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which even puts nectar to shame, was dancing. And Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Advaita Charya, along with all the devotees, were singing the glories of Sri Gauranga in the vision. So Nitai was in two places. Nitai was watching Nitai. And accompanied by resounding mridangas and kartals, everyone was enraptured in some kirtan. The pastimes. Sorry, I lost my place. What happened here? Yes. So, accompanied by resounding mridangas and kartals, everyone was enraptured in some kirtan. The pastimes that took place when Sriman Mahaprabhu resided in Navadvip again became manifest. I do not have the power to describe the bliss in the hearts of everyone at that time. And meanwhile, afternoon came. Now we come to Nishringapalli. Now they all arrived in the village of Devapalli, that's the name now, loudly singing the glories of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. They took rest. And then as guests of the deity, who's the deity? Sri Nishringadev himself, they honored lunch prasad. And at the end of the day, they wandered throughout the village. Sri Nityananda Prabhu then said, this is Devapalli. The famous temple of Sri Nishringa Bhagavan has been here ever since Satya Yuga. After the Supreme Lord, Sri Hari, showed mercy upon Prahlad by killing Hiranyakashipu, he rested at this place. Brahma and other demigods built residences for themselves here, and thus a village was founded. All these demigods resided on top of hillocks, tilas, on the river Mandakini's bank, and they became absorbed in the service of Lord Sri Nishringadev. According to the verdict of the scriptures, this Sri Nishringa Kshetra, which is situated in Sri Navadvip Dham, is supremely sacred. O Jiva, behold Surya Tila, Brahma Tila. Previously, Nishringa Tila was situated to the east of these tilas, but now this place has changed. Just see Ganesh Tila, and after that Indra Tila. There are so many hillocks here. Although Vishvakarma Mahashai constructed innumerable diamond and pearl-studded residences here that were suitable for demigods, the buildings have all disappeared over time. Now even the river Mandakini has dried up, only the hillocks remain. Just see these innumerable pieces of stone here. They are all ruins of temples. Again, after some time, one devotee will attain a drop of mercy of Sri Nishringa Bhagavan and build a huge temple here. He will install Sri Nishringadev here and re-establish worship of him. This place is situated at the border of the 16 Kosas Navadvip Parikrama. This wretched beggar, Bhakti Vinod, whose only treasure is service to the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Janava Devi, abandons the web of Maya and sings of Sri Navadvip's glories, to which there is no end. Thus ends chapter 7. Chapter 8. Jai 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 Shri Sachi Sutta, Jai 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 Shri Avaduta, Sitapati Jai Bhakata Raj, Gadadhar Jai Bhakata Samaj, Jai Nabadvipa Sundara Dham, Jai 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 Gaur Ki Naam. Now, Nitai Sahita Bhakata Gan Hari Hari Bali Chale Takan. Srivas Pandit and the other devotees called out, Hari Hari! Everyone. Hari, Hari. And they proceeded along with Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Can you see him? Are you following behind? As he was talking, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, being carried away by prem, swayed and stammered as if intoxicated. Streams of tears flowed from his eyes, and overwhelmed with emotion, he called out, Gaura, Gaura! Everyone. Gaura, Gaura! All of his ornaments glittered, and his transcendental form illuminated the 10 directions. As Srivas Pandit danced with Sri Jiva, they sometimes wept, and sometimes danced with carefree abandon. All the other devotees also danced as they proceeded onward. When they reached the river Alakananda, Sri Nityananda Prabhu spoke blissfully, O Jiva, the river Mandakini surrounds Nadia, keeping the village Bilva Paksha on her western side. At Suvarna Vihar, which you saw previously, the rivers Mandakini and Alakananda part from each other. Hari Hara Kshetra is situated on Alakananda's east bank and on the bank of the Gandaki. At the right time, a deity will manifest here, and a beautiful grove will adorn this place. Just see Kashi, which is situated on Alakananda's western bank. Shaivites and Shaktas, they are trying to attain liberation here. Here's the deity. They have a picture of the deity. That's the deity. He has various pastimes. Sometimes he disappears and is found in the police station, then he comes back again. Yeah. This Harihara Kshetra is superior to Varanasi, Kashi. Here, Durjati means Lord Shiva with matted hair. He reigns splendidly holding a damaru drum. Shiva is always dancing here, chanting, Gaura, Gaura. Everyone. Gaura, Gaura. And he is praying for his followers to attain Gaur Bhakti. The liberation obtained by sannyasis after living in Kashi and practicing Gyan, speculative impersonal knowledge, for 1,000 years is here kicked away by the devotees as they dance and chant the name of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. These devotees consider themselves fortunate just to drink the nectar of Sri Gaura's name. If any living being, now hear this, if any living being leaves his body in this place, in his final moment, Lord Shiva chants the name of Sri Gaura in his ear and thus liberates him. This holy abode is also called Mahavaranasi because the living entities here need not fear dying, considering that they will definitely attain a transcendental destination upon hearing the pure name of Sri Gaura emanate from Lord Shiva's mouth. In other words, they need not worry about their destination after death. Saying this, Sri Nityananda Prabhu began to dance and prayed that Sri Jiva may also attain praying for Sri Gaur Hari. Unseen by anyone else, Lord Shiva the master of Kailas, respectfully bowed at Sri Nityananda Prabhu's divine feet. Lord Shiva resides here with Gauri, Sri Parvati, constantly chanting Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's names and thus fulfilling all of his desires. Now,
is that Lord Shiva and Krishna together?
What?
Hari-hara, is that Lord Shiva
Yes,
and Krishna?
this is Vishnu and Shiva, Hari and Hara. To show, there's a whole discussion. You can read Gurudev's other Parikrama book, which is called Navadvip Parikrama. There he goes into a lot of details about this deity and the concept, the tattva of Shiva tattva and Krishna tattva or Vishnu tattva. How they are like identical personalities. They're practically one. Why? Because of affection. This is the main thing. So now we're coming into Gadi Gacha Gram Shri Godruma Dvip Ki Jai. The independent Lord Sri Nityananda Prabhu walked with the devotees and arrived at the village of Gadi Gacha. Laughing, he said, "The name of this island is Godruma. Surabhi resides here eternally." Being subjected to Sri Krishna's Maya, the proud Indra showered Gokul with torrents of rain. At that time, Sri Hari lifted Giriraj Govardhan and carefully protected Gokul. When Indra's pride was completely crushed, he recognized Sharangadhara, Sri Krishna, who is the holder of the Sharanga bow. So Indra's pride, when he was crushed, then he understood, oh, this is actually Krishna, who holds the Sharanga bow. And to rectify his offense, Indra fell to the ground and he caught hold of Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Although Sri Nanda Nandana, the ocean of mercy, forgave and pacified Indra, the fear in Indra's heart did not diminish. Indra said to Surabhi, "Because of not understanding Sri Krishna's pastimes, I have committed a dreadful, dreadful offense. I have heard that in Kali Yuga, Sri Brajendra Nandan will perform his astonishing pastimes in Navadvip. But I fear that at that time I will again be bewildered by the illusory energy Maya and commit offense. O Surabhi, O Kamadenu, you know everything about how to be saved from committing offenses. Please now explain this to me." Surabhi answered, "Let us both go to Sri Navadvip Dham and there worship Nimai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." So now Sri Nityananda told, thereafter Indra and Surabhi worship Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu at this very place. And you can go to that very place. There's a big temple there now, right, on that island. And that was built in the very dwelling place of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Surabhi Kunj. And when he sings in his songs about Surabhi Kunj, that's the very place.
Isn't there something about being freed from offenses?
Yeah, yes. We'll hear that. So now, Nityananda Prabhu said, it is very easy to worship Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Although the result is also easy to attain, it is topmost. Both of them constantly chanted Gauranga's name. Who? Both of who? Indra and Surabhi. They constantly chanted Gauranga's name and they wept. Then quickly they attained darshan of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. They had darshan of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's astonishingly graceful divine form. Sriman Mahaprabhu was smiling gently, having assumed the posture of one giving a boon. Mahaprabhu, who is the storehouse of rasa, was himself overwhelmed with ecstatic love, prem. My Lord Sri Gaur Hari smiled and said to Indra and Surabhi, I know of your desire. I will soon appear in Navadvip. At that time you will also take birth in Navadvip, and you will serve me in my pastimes there. Now, the snares of illusion, they will not be able to touch you. And saying this, Mahaprabhu vanished, and Sri Surabhi Devi began living underneath a peepal tree, continuously serving Sri Gaur Hari's divine feet. Since then, this island is called Go-Druma, which means go, cow, and druma, tree, the island where a cow resides beneath a tree. So, all the desires of the devotees are fulfilled here. If someone makes a hut here and performs bhajan, he will easily become engrossed in service to Sri Gaur Hari's lotus feet. Now comes the story of Markandeya Rishi's coincidental arrival in Godruma Dweep. Once Markandeya Rishi, the son of Mrikanda, came to this island at the time of universal devastation. His story is truly wonderful. Although the sage had received a lifespan of 7 kalpas, he had to face great danger at the time of devastation, because every place became inundated with water. The sage began searching for somewhere to stay. And as he was carried away by the water, he thought, "Alas, alas, why did I ask for such a boon? Only Sri Navadvip Dham, extending 16 kosas, remained to give shelter to the devotees, while all the other places became inundated with water." Tossed about in the waves, the sage became unconscious. Then, upon reaching Sri Navadvip Dham, Surabhi saw the sage floating in the water, and out of mercy she carefully lifted him out of the water. And upon regaining consciousness, Markandeya Rishi beheld the amazing Godruma Dweep. He saw that it extended for 2 billion miles, and that it was beautified by countless flowing rivers and waterfalls. A variety of lush green trees and creepers adorned this place, and the birds sang the glories of Sri Gaur Hari. He saw a peepal tree that extended over 8 miles, under which Mother Surabhi was sitting. The sage, afflicted by hunger, said to Mother Surabhi, "Oh, Bhagavati, please save my life. Please remove my distress by feeding me with your milk." And the compassionate Surabhi gave her milk to the sage to drink. Having regained his strength, the son of Mrikanda again spoke to Surabhi, "You are Bhagavati, you are my mother. Your illusory energy is spread throughout the entire universe. Without thinking properly, I asked for a boon to remain alive for 7 kalpas. But, O mother, the time of devastation is fraught with much distress and trouble, and therefore completely devoid of happiness. O mother, what shall I do? Please be merciful and tell me how I can be freed from this unhappiness." And after hearing his words, Mother Surabhi answered, "Stay here and worship Sri Gaur Hari's lotus feet. This Navadvip is beyond material nature. It is therefore never destroyed. Although the material eyes perceive it as extending for 16 kosas, this supreme realm of Vaikuntha is eternal and completely faultless. Here, space and time are always above material existence, and no one here knows anything about the material illusory energy. Please behold this wonderful Navadvip Dham. It is surrounded on all sides by the virtuous river Viraja, which separates the material from the spiritual world. Each part of this Dham measures 2 billion miles, and its center is the grand town of Mayapur. The 8 islands of this Dham are likened to the 8 petals of a lotus flower. Antardweep is in the middle, and it is like a stamen. All holy places, demigods, and sages reside here, worshipping Sri Gauranga. O Markandeya, you also should take shelter of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, knowing them to be the only true wealth. Completely give up the desires for sense enjoyment, bhukti, liberation, mukti, and take shelter of pure bhakti dharma. By worshipping Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, you will quickly attain the fruit of madhur prem. And when prem appears in someone's heart, it drowns him in the nectar of Sri Krishna's various loving pastimes. He will attain the shelter of Sri Radha's lotus feet in Braj, and his heart will always be immersed in service to the divine couple. So, time. We're not beyond time here, like in Navadvip Dham. We will complete this pastime of Surabhi Devi and Markandeya Rishi tomorrow, and we'll continue on in our Shri Navadvip Dham Parikrama Ki Jai, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Jiva Goswami Pada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo